On today's solo episode of the Locked On Nuggets podcast, we're going to talk about what you need to see in Game 3 from the Denver Nuggets to reset this series. And if they do, is the series still winnable? We'll talk about that in segment 2. And at the end, the fallout if the Nuggets continue to play Games 3 and 4 the way they did 1 and 2. This is Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody, and welcome to the Locked On Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Matas, flying solo today. Matt had obligations, could not join. He did a show earlier in the week, so if you want to hear his thoughts on Game 2, you can rewind and check that out. I'm going to do it solo today and go over all those things I discussed at the beginning. Got lots of thoughts on it. It's been nice to get a couple days off from the game, honestly. I mean, with a game like that, one of the worst in Nuggets history, Game 2, especially of this Jokic era, it was nice to get away from it, kind of like decompress, reset, and rethink about everything. And I think there's some interesting stuff now that you get removed from it. There's some interesting things for Nuggets fans to kind of discuss and to look forward to. So we'll get into all of that. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Okay, first topics. What do we need to see from the Denver Nuggets in Game 3 specifically? Forget about the rest of the series. In Game 3, you got a couple days to prepare. I think that this is not necessarily a tactical series. And I know that sounds crazy for a team that only scored 80 points. There are some tactical things that are going to have to, change. Denver, they did not have Rudy Gobert in Game 2. They will have him in Game 3. So Denver is going to have to make their adjustments, more likely based on mostly what happened in Game 1, but with the also building in that I think the Wolves now understand that Denver does not handle pressure, on-ball pressure very well. The cat is out of the bag on that, by the way. Denver's roster all year has had a vulnerability of ball handlers. They've really only got two, Reggie Jackson and Jamal Murray. So that was always a thing that I thought teams could look to exploit. The Wolves, knowing Denver so well, obviously they were able to do it. With Aaron Gordon being guarded by Rudy Gobert, now that Gobert is back, I do think there's an opportunity for Aaron Gordon to bring the ball up the court more. Rudy Gobert's not going to full court press, and if he did, that would be a bad decision for them, bringing him so far from the basket, because if you beat the press, you're going to have easier looks in transition. So I think that in Game 3, Denver is going to have a little bit better, that on-ball pressure that really changed the game in Game 2, I think will be slightly less. I think Denver will be able to mitigate it, one, with a little more mental and physical preparation for it, but also, two, with Gobert there, it's a little bit different. There's other challenges that happen when Gobert's there. But before those adjustments, I think Denver needs a mental reset. And this is the part that when you watch that game, I mean, let's be honest, part of what was so frustrating about watching that one is anybody watching it saw some quit in Denver and frustration in Denver. I mean, Jamal Murray literally throwing something onto the court for which he was fined $100,000. He will not be suspended, which is a lucky break for the Nuggets. But doing something like that shows you that the frustration level was at a maximum. It couldn't have been higher. When a team gets rattled, they tend to obviously bring out the worst in themselves. Denver getting so obviously rattled is a surprise to anybody that, trusted their championship pedigree, trusted what they did last year and that they could bring that into this year. So to reset mentally with 3 days off, number one, toughness has to be on the menu for the Nuggets. They cannot get rattled. And by the way, I think Michael Malone played into this a little bit, and it's interesting, the coach always has decisions they can make emotionally on how they present themselves to the team. Do they go intense? Do they try to stay calm and give everybody confidence? What's the mood? Michael Malone getting in Mark Davis's face in the first quarter of that game should have gotten a tech, did not get a tech, which was a surprise. I think it's because Mark Davis kind of knew that some calls had gone missed in the, plays leading up to it. So maybe he gave a longer leash, kind of being like, all right, whatever. But Michael Malone doing that, I don't know if he did it. Sometimes Michael Malone does those types of things on purpose. Like he's trying to send a message to his team and fire everybody up. We've seen him get thrown out when it was very obvious. Malone's getting thrown out here. He's trying to inspire the team, what have you. That one to me felt a little bit more like he was losing his composure. And it's not necessarily a coincidence that the game was very close. I think like 4 or 5 points at that point. You get that technical and it's like a 30-5 run for the Wolves. The game was basically over right after that. Now, again, I don't know if Michael Malone was trying to send a message or what he was trying to do, but the message received by the team seemed to be one of panic, of frustration, and all of those things. There was not a toughness that came from the Nuggets after that one. In fact, they played less tough and more unfocused. Jamal Murray clapping at officials and stuff in the early portions of this game. Like, the frustration reached, past the threshold of what's acceptable and what's productive. It reached that level early in that game, and then everything snowballed. So game 3, the refs are allowing a lot of physicality in this series. I know that the rules have been a little bit ambiguous because these rule changes have happened behind closed doors, but they're the same for both teams. Minnesota showed incredible toughness in that game. They were not bothered by some of the tough 50-50 calls or just extra physicality that was allowed. They might look at an official, they might say something, they might get frustrated, but they kept attacking. So Denver in game 3 has to have a toughness to them. If they don't, it tells us something about this team, not just for the series. It tells us something about them that I think we would have to be very concerned for in years to come. So number 1, a toughness. And I think that toughness has to start from specific guys. We'll get to that in a second. Number 2 is a determination. The Nuggets, it's funny because over on DNVR, we were talking about, does this team have the same sort of resiliency that previous iterations have had? And we all said, of course it does. It's the same cast of characters. But it's hard to envision this team that we saw win a title last year and go 16-4 and how resilient they were throughout that entire run. It's hard to see them having a game like the one they had yesterday. That feels like characteristically a different team. So if they don't have a determination tonight, again, I think you have to look at, or on Friday rather, I think you have to look at that and say, okay, this team something has changed. The DNA of this team is not what it used to be. And you have to wonder, you can't just say, oh, well, next year they will be the old team. They're not going to be the team that got ran off their own home court against the Wolves. They're going to be a different team the next year. You can't do that. So determination and toughness has to happen. Number 3 is leadership. And if you watch Michael Malone's presser, and look, I think most Nuggets fans wanted to check out after that loss, to be honest with you. I think even I wanted to check out a little bit, just kind of get away from it. It wasn't a thing you wanted to like bathe in and sit in for a while. But one thing that came out of the presser almost immediately from Michael Malone after game 2, he says that's a very quiet locker room in there, and you can take that multiple ways. So obviously the first way you take that is the locker room is quiet and sad. Not a lot of talking going on. But the second way is that nobody is stepping up to lead this group. And that's why he said very pointedly, you could take that multiple ways. So leadership is clearly missing here. Jamal Murray played horribly, 3 of 18. We're going to talk about Jamal Murray, but that was one of the most disheartening performances you can have from a star player that you believe to be a foundational piece of your team, especially in the lead up of all the games that have came before it. He has not had a great playoffs. He's got 2 huge moments, which you cannot just dust to the side. Those shots are huge. But the way he got physically just dominated in that game by Nickeil Alexander-Walker specifically, but also Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, those guys bottled him up in both games, but especially in game 2, in a way that it would be hard for him to be a leader, because the leadership in that moment is to look at yourself. Now, him doing some of the stuff he did, throwing the stuff and throwing fits, leaving, not talking to the media, but just ducking out immediately for the second time in the series already. That is not a lack of like a poor leadership. That's a complete lack of leadership. You go out to the podium and you face the music when you're the leader of a team, not just in good times, but in bad times. So Malone saying to the media immediately, his first comment, nobody in that locker room is talking right now, is stepping up to the plate and leading this team. That's a red flag. And he's challenging Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic both and saying, we need leadership here. Jokic, I know a lot of people were upset at mine, and I know even Matt's critique of Jokic in game 2, because the defense, the game was really lost at the front court or at the back court, bringing the ball up, losing the ball in transition, not getting into the flow of the offense. But Jokic is a leader of this team, and he is talented enough, we believe, that he is the best player in the NBA. We believe that. So you can't allow for a disruption to one part of your game, disrupt everything else. Even if it's not your fault, a leader looks at it and says, hey, how do I make life better for these guys? How do I lead them through whatever's going on? The fact that Malone is saying that Jokic was not up to that task in the aftermath of game 2, while understandable, it means that in game 3, that has to be him. He has to say, get behind me, guys. I don't know if a text message needs to be sent or what, but you need to see leadership from him to get these guys going and to get it where they need to go. Jokic owning the game is something that has to happen here. Again, He has not been the best player in the series, and that is not a controversial statement. Sometimes some people will say that, and you're like, I don't know, he's been as good as this guy or as good as that guy. It's not close. He's not the best player in the series. He is not impacting it the way other guys are impacting it. And you could even make an argument that he's not the second best player in this series, just because how could you say anybody on the team that got beat by 30 points at halftime was, one of the best players on the court? It just wasn't the case. He has to own this game. He's capable of it. Usually you have to wait deeper into a series till he really pulls out, some kind of dominant performance. But with the Nuggets right now, they're spiraling through games 1 and 2. They need somebody that gives them confidence. Anthony Edwards gives the Wolves confidence. Jokic has not given the team confidence yet in the series, and he's capable of it even with the disruptions that they're causing. So one, defensively, Jokic has not looked like he's putting in much effort. He looks honestly sad, like he's not up for this. That like he could see a scenario where he's home next week and it's not that bad of a scenario for him. He needs to own this game. He needs to give his team confidence and show them like, no, we're still in this. We can do this. And everybody get behind me. I'm going to put myself out there and show us how it's done. And then Murray keeping his composure is a big one. They're going to pressure him. They're going to foul him. He has yet to have a great 48 minutes in the playoffs. Game 3 would be very inspiring if that was the first time he had a full 48-minute great game and won them the game. It would be a thing where at this moment, part of why I think Nuggets fans don't have confidence that their team can get it done in the series is because you just don't picture Murray. If I told you, can Nuggets win this series right now, most Nuggets fans would say no. But if I said, what if I told you Jamal Murray was going to be great for the rest of the series? He was going to be great, just like last year's playoffs. Then you would say, okay, it's different. All bets are off. The thing is, we don't believe that is going to happen. So Murray keeping his composure and finding a way to battle through his injuries, battle through the fatigue, battle through whatever, clunkiness has ailed him to start this playoffs. That would go a long way to the Nuggets getting back on track. And then lastly, Michael Malone making meaningful adjustments. Sometimes the adjustment is just playing harder. Sometimes there's nothing major that has to happen. But when you lose 2 games at home to start a series, and when the second one is a blowout, I think sometimes you need a token adjustment. You need an adjustment that maybe it's not, is this a home run? Absolutely not. Is this a slam dunk? No. But is it something that just gives us a difference? We're going to give a different look. We're going to play a different guy. Sometimes that alone is something to rally behind. It's like, okay, we're trying something new. At the very least, we're trying something new here. Michael Malone, I think, look, game 2 was a hard game for Michael Malone. Rudy Gobert was supposed to play. All of the adjustments leading up to that were about Rudy Gobert. When he doesn't play, I think there is a bit of a, well, what do we do now? Everything we just thought about was different. And that's not an excuse. Like Denver needs to win. They still need to. In fact, you take away an important piece, you should actually get better. But nonetheless, I think game 2 had some built-in challenges that game 3 will be a little bit more standard. I think Michael Malone needs to make the requisite adjustments and kind of get the Nuggets, give them some confidence, give them some hope that there's going to be something different for them in game 3 strategically. All right, let's take a break. On the other side, I want to get into, is the series still winnable? What would it look like for you to have hope? You Nuggets fans who are low on hope at this very moment, what would it look like for you to regain hope? We'll talk about that on the other side. Locked On Nuggets is brought to you by DoorDash. Mother's Day is this weekend. Maybe you can't be with your mother this weekend. Maybe you're in a different state. She's in a different state. There's something going on. Well, there's a great idea for you for a nice gift to show you that you care and are thinking about her. DoorDash. The way that and also, with mothers, sometimes they don't know how to use DoorDash. This could be an introduction to a whole new world where you show her, hey, this is an incredible way for you to get things delivered directly to your door. You want food, you want groceries, whatever. You got it. You can get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend 15 or more on your next flowers, convenience, grocery, or retail order now on DoorDash. And like I said, I got this gift. I had something going on, had to miss a couple days of work, and one of my friends got me this gift. It was the first time I'd ever even heard of this gift. And I was like, you know what? That was super helpful. I actually used it. We were busy with some things with the family, taking care of a bunch of stuff. We weren't able to prepare meals and everything. That DoorDash gift card came in really conveniently. So I think this is actually, it sounds almost silly, but it's actually a great idea. So get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend 15 or more on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail store with the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. Also want to tell you guys about LinkedIn Jobs. They have the tools to help you find professionals for your team faster and for free. I am the head of content at DNVR. In the capacity of that role, I have to hire new people whenever we bring them on. And I'm telling you right now, we get multiple. We don't even have a job posting right now. We get multiple people emailing saying, "How can we get on? Can I work for you? I want to do this or that." Usually not qualified. Usually different. It's hard to sort through when we get that many. I don't even read them. When we do get a new job posting, we go to LinkedIn Jobs. Why? Because they help you sort through who's qualified for this and help you pick the right candidate very easy. It's not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place for you to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all of this while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. That's kind of crazy to think. 86% of businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We'll be right back with more Locked On. Back here, segment 2 of the Locked On Nuggets podcast. Matt Moore is off today. He will be back later in the week, as will Swipa. We got another off day here. Nuggets are practicing here in a little bit. As soon as this is done, I'm going to head down and check out practice, see what people have to say. Very curious to hear what the Nuggets' mood and temperament is. It'll be one of the more interesting practices. In segment 2, though, I want to talk about, is this series still winnable? The odds aren't, the odds actually on FanDuel are not as bad as you think. I think it's like plus 800 or something like that. Like, given how hopeless things looked to, in game 2, the biggest sort of logistical fallacy or bias that your brain makes is you just assume whatever happened in the last game is going to happen in the next one. And sometimes that's the case. Look, we all know patterns. When a team loses 2 games at home, usually that means they are not as good as the team that just won the 2 games at home and is going back to the home building. But every game takes on its own personality. Game 1 was very close. Denver kind of wilted at the beginning and at the end of that game. Game 2 was not. Game 3, what is it going to look like? Well, here's the thing. I think you just need one game, because at this moment, as I mentioned in the last segment, everything feels like the Wolves have the ability to just punish Denver. And honestly, it's probably the case. They've built a roster that was looking at Denver specifically when they assembled it. So they have a design for Denver, and they have great defenders all over the court. But if you crack that defense, or if you just stay a little bit more calm and composed under pressure, you can at least reset your mind and say, okay, well, Denver, it's possible. Denver knows how to beat this team. They just showed that they can beat them on the road, which, by the way, a team coming back rested up 2-0 and now coming to your home building, that is going to be a very excited atmosphere at Target Center in Minneapolis. They are going to be up for that one. So if you go in there and win, you, for the first time in the series, place a little doubt in their brain. Think about it. The series was 18-4 in game 1 to start. Confidence through the roof, carried throughout the end of the game. They win game 1, even more confident in game 2, and they kick your ass in game 2. Confidence is through the roof. If you go into their building and get 1, you at least take a hit or take a bite out of that confidence. It doesn't mean they're going to be not confident in game 4, but it means you at least say, hey, okay, we thought this was a sweep. We thought this was a no-hoper. Game 3 went their way. It also puts pressure on game 4, because what happens if Denver then wins game 4? The pressure switches back to Minnesota. So you win game 3 and all bets are off. But here's the other thing. Jokic has not made his imprint on this series yet. Jamal Murray has had a negative imprint on this series. If any of those things change, again, there's a psychological message that's sent to everyone else of, all right, we figured at least something out. Those guys are the guys we thought they were, won a title last year, did all these things. That was 57-win team this year. They are all, we are all those things. And there's a little bit momentum there, but to make an impact in this game, Aaron Gordon has yet to be impactful. Maybe the solution is for him not to play as much or to play different minutes, because right now he is really struggling for whatever reason in those starter lineup minutes. He is specifically, I know he made some shots in the first quarter, but he has not made an impact overall. And the on-off plus-minus stuff really shows that he has not made an impact, especially against Gobert when Gobert was on the court. So Aaron Gordon can be a player. Jokic, Murray, Aaron Gordon, any of those guys can end up having a positive impact in game 3, which would be different from games 1 and 2. And it says, okay, it gives you something to hold on to. Have we figured something out there? Michael Malone's adjustments. It's a little wild to me that that Justin Holiday is playing more minutes than Christian Brown and Peyton Watson. All year, the plan was you were going to develop your young guys throughout the course of the year so that in the playoffs they were ready. And Justin Holiday was there to be like a safety measure. If you ask Calvin Booth, Reggie Jackson was there to be a safety measure. The fact that those two guys are the guys playing, to me, highlights, one, Michael Malone's lack of faith in the other guys on the team. I mean, that's a message that he is sending to Christian Brown, to Peyton Watson specifically, who's barely playing in this one, of, hey, I'm not really trusting you guys right now. If you flip that, and by the way, they only scored 80 points. You throw Justin Holiday out there because you need spacing, you need shooting. If you only score 80 points, maybe that was a bad thought. You look at Jaden McDaniels, he had 7 points in the last game. He made a huge impact on that game. In the minutes he played, only 7 points. So can a guy like Peyton Watson, I understand but we need spacing, we need this or that. Maybe this is a rock fight. Maybe you need to hold them to 80 points as well, and Peyton Watson gives you an avenue to do that. And if you get a performance like that from one of those guys, a Christian Brown or a Peyton Watson, again, it gives you confidence that, okay, maybe we learned something about ourselves. And I think that confidence of one of those two guys having a major impact is especially important because that's who you were this year. I think one of the things that sends a bad message to your team is when you change and alter who you're playing, that drastically in a series, it sends a message of like, all year we were this, but we have to be this in this series. I think that can be a thing that's playing into contributing a little bit to the Denver feeling so hopeless. But if you get a big contribution from one of those guys on the bench, again, at least feels like there's something fresh and something new. And then lastly, if you win this game, it's likely because you dictated the pace of it. Right now, the Timberwolves, the most impressive part of this, the on-ball pressure. The second most impressive part of this is that on-ball pressure has dictated how the series was going to be played. Both games in some form or fashion. Denver has not gotten the ball to Jokic in rhythm. They have not played off of him in rhythm. They're not getting the two-man game. So if any adjustments you can make in game two allow for those things, you at least get the confidence of, that's right, our best punch is finally back to us. We have that to build off of, and you can go into game four with a little bit of momentum. So to me, look, I said this the other day, gun to my head, if you ask me how the series ends, I would say a sweep, because the Nuggets have shown nothing in games 1 and 2 that they're capable of overcoming this, or that they seem motivated. That's the most concerning part, is they didn't seem motivated to fight through it in game 2. But if you come out in game 3 and you show that those things are not true, that this team has found a resolve in the last 3 days that they did not have at home in games 1 and 2, if they find that resolve in game 3, all bets are off. Is it an uphill battle? Absolutely. But you took a bite out of their confidence. You established a rhythm. And now you have to just go into the trenches in game 4 and get a win and even the series. And every momentum is 100% back. And at that point, most people would actually be picking Denver. So game 3 to me is a huge one for the Denver Nuggets. And in the next segment, I want to talk about, it's not just a big one for this specific playoffs. It's actually a big one in the overall arc of Nikola Jokic, Michael Malone, Jamal Murray, and this era of Denver Nuggets basketball. We'll talk about that on the other side. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk about Monopoly Go. And I know what you're saying, flag on the play. You already talked about that, but there is just so much good stuff in the game. Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much more to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the board with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton, including their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off of the bench and go download it for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. We'll be back to wrap up Locked On Nuggets. Final segment of the Locked On Nuggets podcast. Again, the Nuggets will be practicing here in roughly 1 hour. I'm excited to hear what Michael Malone, probably Jokic, and maybe even Jamal Murray have to say at practice today. And I'm just interested to hear the mood of how they're feeling about the series and how they're feeling, after a couple days off. That should be very telling. Stay locked to the timeline for updates about that. All right, the fallout. So the Nuggets right now in 2 games have gotten absolutely boat raced by the Wolves, and not just the Wolves. A team that features Chris Finch, a former coach, Mike Honoria, a former coach, Tim Conley, a former executive. Why is that so important? Because one of the fallouts from the series, should Denver get swept or should Denver just get beat resounding? I mean, remember last year the Lakers lost the closest sweep ever. We laugh about it, but at least you could say there was no games that looked like game 2. None of the games looked like that, where a team was completely outclassed and demoralized. So if that happens to Denver in this series and they lose in that fashion, even the way that the Suns did, like the Suns did not have a game that was as bad as this one, but they did have a lot of games that were practically as bad. I mean, we're splitting hairs at a certain point. What's a 20-point to 30-point loss? They're mostly the same thing. So if you lose like that bad, you have to ask yourself, have things expired? Has it gotten stale? Has a team figured out? I mean, sometimes a team is great, but then there's a weakness in them that is revealed, and you have to go back to the drawing board. For Denver, length against Jokic. Last time they lost when they were fully healthy was in the bubble against Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee, and Anthony Davis. 3 athletic bigs that you could throw on Jokic, and they bothered him. They disrupted him, and they got him frustrated the same way he looked frustrated in game 2. So maybe that's a piece of the puzzle, and teams say, as good as Denver is, we're not worried. We just have to pick up a JaVale McGee caliber player and throw him out there, and we should be okay. Just have one of those guys on your roster specifically for that team. Ball pressure on Jamal Murray. Denver didn't have a lot of ball handlers. Does that mean Denver has to go out and find more ball handlers? First of all, probably yes, no matter what, even if they win the series, that would be a thing that you look at and say, at the very least, that's a weakness and we need to address it. But maybe it's a thing of, hey, that's a Jamal Murray weakness. He's not the most athletic guy. He has good verticality. He gets up. He has power. He's stronger, than most guards, but he's not quick. He's actually slower than most. And if you put lengthy on-ball pressure and trap him, the Minnesota Timberwolves are saying he can't beat that. And 3 of 18 in game 2 says, yep, you're right. He can't beat that. So is that the blueprint? And then every team knows when you go into a series, like even if Denver gets through the series, they go on to play, let's say the OKC Thunder, who are up 1 over Dallas right now. If I'm them, I'm just saying, you know what? We got a lot of rangy defenders. Cason Wallace, Lou Dort, full court press Jamal Murray at all times. And when he catches the ball, push him up to the logo, make him dribble, make him use energy. He doesn't have it, and you're going to trap and you're going to get him to turn it over. So the fallout here is, and then behind that, Denver has athleticism, especially in Aaron Gordon, but he is looking worn down. He just looks tired. And as a result, Denver looks supremely less athletic than the Minnesota Timberwolves. So maybe that's the thing, is teams say, yeah, but throw athleticism out there at them and it throws them off. All of those are safe bets, in my opinion, if you were just looking at what the Nuggets did in the series. I think teams would say, we now know the key. The Timberwolves have exposed some weakness in Denver. That's a major fallout that makes you have to rethink the entire roster structure. It makes you think, okay, well, can this unit get it done? If we just run it back next year, we're a little healthier, we add some pieces on the margins, you would still worry that teams are going to say, yeah, but you throw length on Jokic, you full court pressure Murray, and you have athletes and wings out there, and they get stuck in the mud, and they look not just bad, they look completely disrupted. That's one thing that I think would be very real and you'd have to look at. I think trust in Jamal Murray would be completely shattered if the series continues to go the way that it did. And how could it not? He missed 2 years with injury. He's banged up this year. It's unfair, perhaps, to like this label, injury prone. It's one of those things that people are always like, it sucks. But it's also a thing that you have to factor in. Nobody's looking at Zion Williamson right now and saying, man, don't say he's injury prone. That's unfair. It's tough, but a team has to understand that if a guy misses time consistently, that becomes a part of it. I think trust in Jamal Murray would be shattered, not just amongst the fan base. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about with the organization. Trust, you would look at that and say, can we just assume he'll be healthy next year? I think the assumption would be he would not be healthy. He's missed 3 of the last 4 years, 3 of the last 5, we'll call it. Even if you say 3 of the last 6, you're basically flipping a coin saying, will Jamal Murray be healthy enough to in the playoffs? 50-50. And no matter what you do, you're building up to a guy that is not healthy over the last handful of years. So trust would be shattered. The way he's handled the adversity, if that continues, it'd be another thing that you would just say, he's a big game player. We all know that. But is he up for the other parts of being a superstar? Forget all-star. That's like a qualifier that's in some ways out of his control. But just, can he be a superstar? He has been that the last 2 times they were in the playoffs, 2020, 2023. They go to the Western Conference Finals, they win a championship. You just assume Jamal Murray provides you that. But if he doesn't, trust in him gets shattered, and then you wonder if he's even healthy. I think trust won't be shattered in Jokic, but it would be broken a little bit. And let's be honest, the legacy part of Jokic is we believe he is among the greatest players to ever play. I believe that. Top 10, top 12, at worst top 14 or so. But if you go out with a sweep like this, when you have a fully healthy team, I know guys are banged up, but for all intents and purposes, every team has guys that are banged up. If you go out in a sweep, that doesn't happen with the all-time greats. And Jokic so far in the series has not been able to impose his will. So I think your trust gets a little bit broken of, yeah, we have the best player in the world, although he would probably lose that. I think rightfully so. Look, Giannis lost it when he lost in 2022. And I just thought it was fair. Like, I can't speak out of both sides of my mouth and say Jokic took the reins or this or that. And then if he loses and someone, then say, well, Jokic doesn't lose it. If it was fair for Giannis to lose that title and LeBron to lose that title and the other guys to lose it when they lost in the playoffs, then it would only be fair for Jokic to lose that title as well. I don't think you'd be shattered trust in Jokic, but it would be one of those things where you can't go into any series and just say, well, we know we have the best player. Because we have the best player in this series, but he hasn't played like it. And you would worry about that going forward, in my opinion, that he can't always impose his will. You would have to ask, are Michael Malone and Calvin Booth on the same page? Calvin Booth gave him a bunch of young players this year. And when the season started, Calvin Booth said, we're going to play those guys this year and have them ready for the playoffs so that they can get ready to go. He's laid out teams like the San Antonio Spurs, who won with a Tony Parker in a second year and a Mike Manu Ginobili in his second year. They won with you. People always say, can you win with youth? He was looking at that model and saying, I believe we can do that. And more importantly, he is looking at the state of the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, the salary cap rules that have been changed in recent years that say it's really hard to have an expensive payroll. And so if you're going to have good players at the top, a la Murray, Jokic, Porter, if you're going to have that, your back end of the roster has to be either veteran minimums on like 1-year deals or 2-year deals, or you're going to have a bunch of rookies on rookie scale contracts. That's the only options you have, or you're not going to have as good of a starting lineup. You're going to have to dilute that and then spend some money, so that you have a little bit more depth. Calvin's approach this year was, you won a title with the starting 5. We're going to keep that. On the bench, we have to get these guys up to snuff, and we have to have them where we trust them ready going into the playoffs. By Michael Malone not playing those young guys as many minutes throughout the course of the year, including the young guys that he brought in, Hunter Tyson, Jalen Pickett, but especially I would say Peyton Watson, who played during the regular season but not playing now. If you did not get them up to snuff, I would look at that and say, okay, I don't think coaching and management is on the same page on this one. And I'm not. The third piece of this are the players. Is Jokic and Murray on the same page? You would have to look at that and examine and say, okay, well, where do we go from here if you got swept? And if the plan was to get young guys ready and they did not play, either management gave us the wrong strategy or the coach was not on board with the strategy and it all blew up in everybody's face. And then the last fallout from all of this would be, is the future actually bright? I think the thing that is giving Nuggets fans existential dread from the butt whooping in game 2 and from going down 0-2 at home is that the Nuggets have only been ascending in the Jokic era. Every year has been better than the one before it. This would be the first year where it's not just that you won a title and then you didn't win a title if you get swept or lose, definitively in the series, but it would also be like somebody passed them. Somebody actually overcame them and got better than them and showed a weakness in them. And that would be a first in the Jokic era. And the next stop is usually retooling. It would not be a thing of like, well, just run it back and we'll see if it hits next year, the same crew, maybe a little healthier. There would be a sense of they have to change in a way they have not changed for years. Even bringing in KCP and Aaron Gordon were sort of extensions of the path they were already on, just with better players. And it changed their identity in little ways, but it wasn't a big one. Would Denver have to go into this offseason? If you get swept, would you have to go in and say, we can't go into a playoffs knowing that sweep is a possibility for this team's ceiling? That's the way this team would change if they were to lose. And it's a big change and it's a big deal. And I think it's why Nuggets feel so much existential dread. So game 3 is on Friday night. I want to see what the team brings from just a confidence standpoint, a determination and a toughness standpoint. And I want to see what the team's leaders, Jokic and Murray and Michael Malone, what they bring to the table, how they present themselves in those games, what kind of look and effort they give to it, what kind of confidence they play with, and the range of outcomes for that game is going to be immense. That does it today for Locked On Nuggets, guys. Like I said, Matt Moore, Swipe will carry you through the rest of the week. I'll be over on DNVR throwing out more thoughts, as well as the All NBA show with me and Tim Legler, which will also be live on Thursdays and Fridays. All right, everybody, we'll see you.